There are a couple of ways that we can do this, and the first that we'll take a look at is using a formula. What tells Excel that what we're entering is a formula rather than a word or a number is the equal sign. So in the cell where I want the result of my formula, where I want to add some numbers together, I type in the equal sign, and then I get ready to type the numbers in. Now in this case I want to add 2 to 4 to the other 4, so I could type the 2 and then the plus sign and then the other numbers. The problem with doing that, of course, is that if later on those numbers change to something else, the formula would be wrong. I'd need to remember to revisit the formula to update the values that I changed within the spreadsheet. So instead of typing the numbers directly, I refer to the numbers by using their cell addresses, and I can type in B7 or click on B7 where the number 2 is to include its cell address in the formula, and then using the plus sign to add, I can then refer to the next number and then the plus sign to refer to the next number, and there I've created a formula that adds those 3 numbers together. I hit return and there's the result of the formula. And of course later on, if the values change, I'll change this to 3 instead of 2, you'll see that the formula has updated to reflect those changes. And clicking on the cell, you can see that the result of the formula appears here, and the formula itself is displayed in the formula bar. And that's all great, except that if there were hundreds of numbers or many more numbers that I were adding together, I'd be bound to make a mistake because I'd get bored creating a formula like that, and you know, it's fraught with all sorts of errors. So there is another way to add things up that's much easier, especially if we're adding lots of numbers together. If we're adding up columns or rows of numbers, we can use what's called the sum function. A function is basically a formula that has information built into it. And there are lots of different functions, and the one to add things up is called the sum function. And to use this, again, put my cursor where the formula needs to go, and I begin with the equal sign because this is a formula. But when using a function, the function name comes next. And as I said, we're using the sum function. And you'll see that underneath a list of other functions appears that are the same as that, and I can go off and click on any of those to find out what they do. A pop-up appears, but which is great, but I want the sum function, so I'll double click on that, and you'll see that what happens next is that the function is inserted and a bracket is opened, all ready for me now to refer to the range of numbers to be added together. Now, rather than selecting individual cells, I'm going to this time click and drag through from the first right the way through to the last of those cells, and there inserted is B7. The colon means up to and including B9, and all that's left for me to do is close my bracket to finish off that argument and hit return, and there I've used the sum function this time to add some numbers together. Great. Much quicker and less fraught with error than using a formula that uses the plus sign time and time again. Now, because sum is something that is really useful, and it's something that we use an awful lot of in Excel, Excel's built in a way of us automatically inserting that function. And it's called AutoSum. With my cursor in place, if I click on AutoSum beneath this column of numbers, Excel will insert the equal sign, the name of the function, it opens the brackets and takes a guess at the range of numbers that should be added together. And it's guessed correctly, which is great. All that I need to do is hit return to accept that formula, and there I've inserted the function. Now we can do this in this case because we have a number of cells that require the same treatment. We can actually select through all of those cells and use AutoSum to quickly add all of those numbers up, and it guesses correctly. I'll just double click to make sure that it's adding up the right blue stuff, and it is, and we're away, which is lovely. But Excel doesn't always guess correctly, and sometimes it needs a little bit of help. In this case, I have a value missing in the middle, so Excel may get a little bit confused. What we can do, rather than allowing Excel to guess what values are to be added together using the sum function, is to pre-select the range of numbers to be added together and also the area where the formula needs to go. So those three numbers, and the formula needs to go in the fourth cell in that range. And this time I'll use AutoSum, and you'll see again that it doesn't guess correctly. It gives me the correct result because I predefined the range. And again, I'm going to select through this area, in this case with two different areas that need to be added together, and just extend my range through to the area where the sum needs to go, and again use AutoSum to add those together, which is great, and we have the correct formula. So we've seen how to add numbers together using mathematical operators, so adding numbers together using the plus sign, and how to add numbers together using the sum function, and how to use the AutoSum to insert that automatically, which is great. And the way that we've been adding up so far is adding adjacent ranges, but what I want to do now is add, using the sum function, this area, but also this area. So let's take a look at how we do that. And in this case, I'm going to type this in manually, equals sum, open my bracket, and as we saw before, I can click and drag through an adjacent range of numbers to be added together. But I also want to, as you know, select and include the other range, excluding the ones in the middle, of course. To do this, we use the comma, and then click and drag through the other range to be included in my formula, and you'll see that a comma has been inserted in the middle. And there we go. The sum of the blue stuff, comma, and the sum of the green stuff. And I hit return and my formula is complete. There, and that's how you add numbers together in Excel. Thanks for watching.